Welcome to the Ian Bousfield Experience. I'm glad you're here. This series of podcasts are just things that come up in my mind when I'm thinking about playing, when I'm thinking about teaching, and general thoughts about music. There are some things here that I hope you'll find really useful. And don't forget, if you've got any comments or if there's anything you want to discuss further, go to ianbousfield.com. Thank you to everybody for all of your fantastic questions. I intend answering all of them. I think before we go any further, I'd like to establish that we are now in September 2019, and the reason why I am stating this date is because this is where I am in my evolution, and my opinions change, move, evolve, always have done over the years. And that's the important thing about being a musician, is to learn and to grow and to change. And certainly as a teacher, over the last 30 years, I've taught everything, pretty much every technical method. And I think that's another important thing to state now, that if I give an opinion that directly goes against or appears to directly go against the advice you're getting from your teacher, it doesn't automatically mean that I disagree with your teacher. It may do, it may not. But there are room for many different opinions, and you know, these are my opinions. This is my opinion given with a good heart and 30 years of trying to grow, as I'm sure your teacher is doing just the same. Okay, now if you hear anything in the background that sounds like waves crashing on the shoreline, that's what it is. I'm in Italy at the moment on holiday, but couldn't wait to answer these questions, particularly the first one, which, guess what, is about equipment. And it comes from Jones_trombone. Hi, Jonathan, hope you're well. And the question is searching for the right material a never-ending story? Can it really make a difference? Can it really make us better? Apart from mouthpieces, which parts of the trombone really make a difference? And he says that he knows that I've been working on developing instruments recently. Actually, I haven't been working on developing instruments recently. I've been working on developing instruments since 1990 was when I first started working with Yamaha, and I used to regularly go to Hamamatsu in Japan, which I think still is their headquarters for research and development. So I've been constantly searching for, the best equipment, the 0.1% that I might be able to get from here or from there. I'm actually quite jealous of people who have a trombone and a mouthpiece and are not interested in trying anything else. There are two different approaches that we can take to this. One is to say it's a slippery slope. Once you start trying instruments and mouthpieces and tweaking this and changing that, you never stop. That's true. But on the other hand, does it make a difference? Yes, it does. I'll give you a quote from the person who I think is the number one instrument developer in the world right now, Christian Griego. And I don't just say that because I play the instruments. I play the instruments because of that. And he once said to me privately, Christian, if you're listening to this, I hope you don't mind me saying this, that he felt that with the right equipment in his hand as a student, he would now be a professional trombone player and not a designer. And that's quite a statement to make, and it's really a great motivation for him to be doing what he's doing. So I will confess, mouthpieces and instruments are a little bit of an addiction to me. I have a huge collection of both. To answer your question directly, does it make a difference? Does the equipment make a difference? Yes, it does, and I'll tell you why. Because beyond a certain age, beyond a certain time in our life, we have a very clear idea as to how we want to sound. Now, if we have an instrument in our hand that doesn't agree with us, that doesn't go with that, and this has got nothing to do with whether an instrument is good or bad, it's a question of whether the equipment ties up with the sound that you want to make. If it doesn't do that, you've got a fight on your hands. That means it's going to be technically more difficult. Now, I'm not sure at what age or what stage of development we say that someone has their own ideas. I mean, obviously, we should be encouraging young players to develop their own ideas and have their sound in their head from a very early age. And so that definitely makes a difference. Just because someone sounds great on a trombone, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will if it doesn't tie up with your concept of sound. The other thing is that our physiology is all different. You know, the shape of our mouth, the size of our mouth, the shape of our tongue, the formation of our teeth are all different. So whilst you can say to a young player, bog standard derivative instrument A with mouthpiece B, up to a certain point, I think that's good, I think that's fine. But beyond that, we need to understand what it is in the sound or the resistance. My own personal feeling is that when we're looking for equipment, we're actually looking for the resistance that matches the one that we're looking for. So does it make a difference? Yes. However, who is going to help you is another matter. We need someone. The trouble with choosing equipment, and I think the problem with trombones the world over right now, is that we choose an instrument standing behind one. We never go into a big concert hall and allow someone who we trust to make the decision as to what sounds best. There are many instruments I know that you stand behind the player and they sound enormous, and you stand in front of them and they really don't. They sound very direct and not at all the concept of the player at all. So to answer your question very briefly, yes, it can make a difference. But how we go about choosing that is where it all starts to get more complicated. And that's where we need these specialists who can do what I call a fitting. Someone who can read how you play, understand how you play, and help you do that. As to how much of a difference it makes, and here's the thing, I'll tell you a story. When I was a young player, there are two funny stories. One of them has to do with equipment, the other one doesn't. There was still is a fantastic shop in London called Phil Parker's, and I was privileged enough to know Phil Parker when he was in his 90s and I was quite young. And I used to go in there to a shop, but for the brief time I was a student. And he used to talk to me. He's a very nice old man, really very kind. And then I didn't go in there for quite a long time. And I went back in there and he said, "Hello, son, how are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm fine." He said, "Oh, what are you doing with yourself now?" I said, "I'm first trombone in the London Symphony." He said, "Of course you are." He didn't believe me at all. And actually one of my colleagues was in there who just sort of burst out laughing and said, "Actually, it's true, he is." That has nothing to do with equipment. This does. I remember going in there and he was peeking around the corner at me saying, "Oh, maybe this mouthpiece with this trombone," and this is going back 25 years. "Oh, I'm not sure about..." And he said, "I think what you need is to practice." And it was the slap around the face that I needed. Yes, equipment and instruments and mouthpieces will make a difference, but first of all we need to make sure that we've done everything we can practice-wise, you know, and technique-wise. I just recently made a technical adjustment to my playing that I can't believe I hadn't done it years ago. I even teach people to do it, but I made a slight change in the summer and it's fixed some issues that I personally thought I had with the instrument. It wasn't the instrument, it was me. So that is a little bit of an ambiguous answer. I have not answered directly to what you should do, because what one should directly do is a very individual matter. But that's how I see the role of equipment and how it can help us. Right, now, on to the next question. This comes from Half Shim, whoever you are. Since when were you a Leeds United fan? This is a very important question. For my sins, I've been a Leeds United football fan since I think I was about 7 years old, 6. No, younger, I think 5 or 6. Back in the great days of Leeds United. And I watched them live, and As you know, when you're the fan of a football club, you don't change. So now things have not gone so well for them since 2002. I'm still a fan. I still follow them. And I don't get to see them live as much as I'd like now because I live in Switzerland. But I still am a Leeds United fan. My allegiance is still there. And I've shared some great moments with friends in that stadium. It's still one of the loudest stadiums in the whole bloody world. It's fantastic. I love it. Okay, so next question is from Arich621, whoever you are. Thank you for your questions. They're very interesting. The first one is to discuss the difference in sound and style concepts between the orchestras that I've played in. Interesting question. I think we can break this down into basically two different principles, two different approaches that orchestras take. The London Symphony Orchestra was and will always be an orchestra of soloists. You know, you hear people shining and standing out and sounding amazing, and you know you'll get an amazing passage with the second clarinet or the second trumpet or whatever. And although the level of intonation and togetherness is extraordinary, it's not so much about the blend of sound. If you look at the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, what I was immediately struck by when I got there was the fact that you were a small piece in a very big jigsaw puzzle, and that it was really important that whatever you were doing blended with whatever else was happening. I remember the first time I heard the orchestra in 1986 was Elektra in the Vienna State Opera. And I kept looking around for these new sounds that I was hearing, and then I realized it was second trumpet with second horn and first oboe, and it was creating a completely new sound. And you know, for example, in Bruckner symphonies as trombone players, you know, whenever you get something that's apparently important, you know, you'd be looking at, and it was usually the cellos and basses, how you can get inside their sound and blend and create a new sound. So it's a question of the London Symphony, you know, another way of describing it is this transparency of sound, which means they're so good at Ravel and Stravinsky, you know, that kind of thing. And we're talking about a very high level here. I'm not saying that they sound bad and all the other stuff, but it's just the various strong points. I think the similarities between those two orchestras are is the adherence to clarity of articulation. Both orchestras play incredibly clearly and work on projecting the sound. So actually, in that regard, there wasn't that much of a difference between the articulation and sound that I made in London and the one that I made in Vienna. Granted, in Vienna it would be a little bit rounder and a little less, little less white heat direct, but the actual principle of articulation was quite similar. The personality behind that is quite different. Now, and here's another subject that is really quite interesting. As many of you may know, I'm very interested in wine, and the best wines in the world, the only ones worth drinking, have something called terroir, the earth, the belonging to the place that they come from. And it was very interesting for us foreigners, when we go to work in an orchestra like the Vienna Philharmonic, we kind of identify what it is to fit in and to recreate a certain style as best we can. I don't think, honestly, we can ever totally do it. People born there have no idea about that kind of thing, because the way the orchestra plays is totally normal to them. And wherever you come from, you are a product of your environment, your education, the food, the society, and the art in the area in which you grew up. So every orchestra in the world is actually going to have a slightly different sound, style and tradition, although it is changing. So Arich 621, I've kind of gone some way on that. That's a bigger topic, actually. I hope that helps somehow. Now, the next one, what am I looking for when I'm sitting on a competition jury? You know, I personally feel the competition system needs somewhat overhauling. Because for years, the competitions have been based along the same lines as the violin and the cello and the piano, which is, someone comes up and plays a piece as well as they can. And, when you're looking at the pianists, they've got the Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, Brahms, Beethoven, you name it. What have we got? Nothing. Really, let's face it. Nothing, certainly of that magnitude. I'm very keen on everything being practically based. What are we looking for in a solo competition? As a trombonist, as an instrumentalist, like a saxophonist, like a percussionist, like a trombone, and even to an extent the trumpet, it's in many ways not really about the instrument. It's about the player. It's personality based. Let's look at the only person in our lifetime who actually has been employed as a full-time soloist. We've only had one. The rest of us have either been part-time soloists who work in orchestras or part-time soloists who teach. Let's face it, that's the fact of it, There's a lot of people who call themselves soloists, but actually their day job is to teach or to play in an orchestra. I've done both. And I'm glad to accept that against myself. So we've only had one, that's Christian Lindberg. Now, just think about Christian. It's this huge personality, just incredible. The stage presence, he grabs your attention from the minute he walks on the stage. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm on a solo competition jury. It's because, if you're a soloist, the audience don't know whether you're any good or not. 99% of them. You're not playing to trombone players. You're not even playing to musicians in many cases. Season ticket holders in orchestras in Karlsruhe or Stockholm or Detroit, the people who turn up, they're not musicians. They want to hear something special, and that's about the personality of, what we do on the stage. Unfortunately, if they want to hear great art, they're probably going to listen to Gidon Kremer. If you don't know who that is, you should check it out, violin. Or they're going to listen to Itzhak Perlman, or they're going to listen to Efim Bronfman on the piano. So it's about the image that we portray. It's about the personality, the communication. So that's number one that I'm looking for. Of course, I want people to be able to play the trombone very well as well. For me, style does not come into it. Again, the difference that we may see between the way an American might play and a French trombone player might play to us might seem it's a million miles apart. It's completely different. But to your average audience member, they're probably not going to notice much of a difference at all when it comes to it. So that's what I'm looking for. And I'm looking for special moments. I'm looking for someone who can create something special for me. But don't hold your breath. Don't go looking for me on competition juries, because you're not going to see me on many. As I say, I think the system needs overhauling considerably. I was on the Tchaikovsky competition in the summer because Valery Gergiev asked me. And if he ever asks me again, I'll do it again. Because frankly, I love him. And I love the Tchaikovsky competition. I'm a huge supporter of it. And that, that I would do that anytime. I would do anything for that guy because I think he's a bloody genius. So, but what I'm seeing unfortunately on competition juries is I've seen too often people judging competitions based on whether someone does what they do or not. Now, I'm not painting every competition jury in this light, and I'm talking mainly about the ones in Europe. I don't know the ones in America. The rest of the world, they may be run on a completely different basis. So bear in mind, I'm talking about my experience of the European competitions. Like I say, I've seen so many people about, that's not the way you play the Tomasi. That's not the way one does this. What about the standard interpretation of this piece? Come on, time to throw that away. It's outdated. So that's my first objection to it. The other thing is that there's huge sour grapes, I think, amongst a lot of competitors about the fairness of juries. And Yeah, this is where I also have a little bit of an issue with it. I personally, maybe I'm just too English, I don't know. But I would personally find it very, very difficult to sit on a jury where my own student is going to win it, or he's going to be really successful in the competition. It doesn't look good. And again, I'm not accusing anyone of unfairness, but we have a situation where, let's put it this way. I was always raised on this. There are two things. There's fairness and there's the appearance of fairness. So I feel as I can discuss this quite openly without bad-mouthing any of my colleagues who sit on juries. I'm sorry, but even if your student was the winner, I've seen a competition recently where the first three places went to people who were students of people on the jury. And it doesn't matter whether it was fair or not. It doesn't look fair, does it, if you look from the outside? And I think it just does a lot to discredit the competition system. So we need to be creating not only fairness, but the appearance of fairness. And, this is not a new thing. In the 1980s, I was really encouraged by many people to take part in competitions. I never did. And one of the reasons why I didn't take part in the competitions was I felt I had too much to lose. I was very successful when I was quite young. And there was certainly in my time when I was a kid, there was a certain person who appeared on a lot of juries who was, quite famous for doing demolition jobs on some very good players. And I didn't want to take part in that system. And I think it's a shame that over the years, the most prominent young players, certainly on the trombone, I don't think this is the case on the trumpet or the horn, but I've not felt that they can risk taking part in a jury. So I think competitions need overhauling. I think they need changing. The system that I'm seeing at the moment, I'm seeing people being successful in competitions who don't have solid basic techniques. And I'm not talking about someone who can play the bloody Mozart Requiem. I'm talking about someone who's, aspiring to have the qualities of someone like a Maurice Andre, who is still, for me, the benchmark in competitions. So there you go, Ari 621. That may have been a little bit more than you had bargained for. But those are my opinions, on the different styles of orchestras, different concepts, and also about competitions. Okay, next question. Oscar Redknack. There we go. It's all one word. Sorry, forgive me for reading it out so stupidly. You'd like to hear my opinion. What are the key factors of becoming a successful trombonist and musician? Right. How do you become a successful trombonist, musician? I think the first thing to do is put those words in the other order. How do you become a successful musician who plays the trombone? I think we have to. If we were running a business, we'd have a business plan where you wanted your business to be in 1 year, 6 months, 5 years, whatever. And you'd have a strategy. So that means every day you're going to get up and work out what you want to achieve that day. So you work out how you're going to develop yourself as a musician. What music do you need to listen to? Who do you need to talk to? What book do you need to read? What score do you need to study? What are the individual components of becoming a good trombonist? Scales is a good example. Scales, long notes, arpeggios, exercises. Plan out your day as to how constructive you can get in saying, I'm going to say 20 minutes on this, 20 minutes on this. And know what your goals are, know what you're looking for, know what you're looking to achieve. And remember, as far as we as musicians are concerned, patience means work without expectation of result. We go to work. See yourself as a professional student with a job to do. Those questions are really, really general. But you know what? Look at the daily practice schedule of Christian Lindbergh. It's not crazy. I get my students to look at this. He gets up every morning and he knows exactly what he's going to do. And if you planned your day out like that, it would make a big difference to you too. Right, you have 2 more technical questions. Do I think playing pieces by memory is a necessity for a professional musician? No, I don't. Does it help? Possibly. I think if we play from memory in a way that we are almost creating the music for the audience, then it's better, because that means that we know the piece of music to the point of almost creating it ourselves. So yes, from that point of view, yes. But too many people, when they play from memory, memory suggests remembering. And all you're focusing on is remembering the notes, but not what we're supposed to be doing. So I feel this, no, it doesn't bother me. If someone stands there with a music stand, as long as they're not hiding behind the music stand, I personally don't have a problem with that. I play some things from memory, some things I don't. Certainly a lot of new pieces, I don't. Some people have the ability to memorize music easier than others. That's not a musical skill or gift, and it shouldn't be a requirement to becoming a professional musician. And like I said, I do play things from memory sometimes. In fact, I used to do it all of the time. As I get older, my memory doesn't work so well. I have a photographic memory, but there's no film in my camera. Okay, how do you have advice on how to control your facial muscles? Wow. That is a very short question with an extremely long answer. I can't give it probably the answer that it deserves. Basically, your facial muscles should react to the speed, the pressure of the air passing through your lips. Don't worry about your facial muscles. The business end is the hole in your mouth where the air comes out. That's what you need to be controlling. If you're thinking about the muscles in your face, you're looking at the wrong thing. If you control that hole, if you control the shape of that hole, the shape of your embouchure, the muscles will do whatever is necessary. I thought I was going to need a long answer, but actually that's the top and bottom of it. Okay, now we have, here we are, similar, Trumigor. Hello, Trumigor. How to get a strong embouchure and relax the throat and breathing. Right, okay. Well, how to get a strong embouchure? First of all, think about this. It's good to have a strong embouchure, but it's better not to need one. Just if you have a face, if you have the strength of Arnold Schwarzenegger in your lips, it isn't going to help. In fact, you might be overusing it. Of course, we need some strength, but that comes with time and comes with practice. Make your embouchure react to the speed of the air coming through, the pressure of the air coming through your lips, and then that will be enough exercise for your face. The embouchure will have to react to get stronger, to deal with the air. Make your face stronger by putting more air through it, but don't hurt yourself. They're very delicate muscles. Don't ever push the air so hard. We don't need to go weightlifting. We need to be strong enough and not more strong than that. How to get strong embouchure and relaxed throat and breathing. This is a common question. There are still some teaching schools floating around there that talk about playing with an open throat. And let me tell you, I spend my life obsessed with trombone technique, have done for decades. I don't get that thing about playing with an open throat. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I'm not understanding it. I don't know. But I can't open my throat. I can't open and throw. I just can't, you know. The only thing, and I think it's overcomplicating things. You know, we as trombone players find multitasking difficult enough as it is. You know, if you take in a relaxed breath in and out. Now, you've asked how to get relaxed breathing. I don't think you need to teach me how to relax your breathing. You were born breathing in a relaxed way. That's how you breathe when you play the trombone as well. If you breathe in a relaxed way, in a natural, please cut out thinking about trombone breathing or brass playing breathing. You know, we need natural breathing. If you breathe in a natural way, your throat will open. And if you don't do anything silly when you're playing, I guess it'll stay that way. Honestly, I don't notice it. I think it's overcomplicating things. And if that raises a lot of questions in your head, then I'm happy. This is a subject that I'll address much more. Okay, now the last one on Instagram was from Leander.Martin. I'd love to know what to look for when composing for trombones. As a composer and non-trombonist, this is especially interesting in the age of those virtual instruments. Okay. Okay. On behalf of all trombonists in the world, please stop using us as a hammer. We are a very effective hammer, perhaps the most effective hammer in all music, but it's not all we do. The trombone is the most beautiful, ethereal, melodic instrument that there possibly is. I've always been on a bit of a crusade, you know, to bring forward this more melodic aspect to the trombone which we have. And of course, you're all obsessed with using glissandos. Why the heck not? The system of glissandos on the trombone is exactly the same as that on a string instrument. But one questions why one never hears the violin playing the acrobat. There are so many musical ways of playing that glissando effect. Think of a sitar. Think of the way a violin will do portamentos, and try and get us to play those. Even trombone players don't think about that. So that's quite an interesting thing there. Now, I'm now on to Facebook, and I have Zeb Tonkin. Be great to hear about how to deal with problematic students. Zeb Tonkin, you should know all about this. How are you? How to deal with problematic students. I think you always have to try and see it from the side of the student. You have to understand. And it depends how problematic they are. You know, philosophically, Patrick Harold, the tuba player, once said, he was a great tuba player, wonderful pedagogue, great teacher, said teaching is about having your arm around the student's shoulder whilst at the same time kicking their backside. The balance of the two is everything. And I think that's absolutely right. Now, Max van den Brand. Hey, Max, how are you? Good. Great. Fantastic. Wonderful player. Mental preparations, please. Max, this is a huge one. I don't know whether I can do this right now. I'll just give a really quick one. You know what everyone with mental preparation? First of all, concentrate when you're practicing. Make sure your thought process when you're practicing is exactly the same as when you're performing. A lot of us think we have to do something special when we perform. We don't. We have to do something special when we practice. And then keep that same thought process going when we take it on the stage. One small thing on that subject, stage fright, whatever fright. Don't try and remove stage fright. Fear protects us. Take us back to the oldest one in the book. When you're walking down a path in a forest and you jump because you think you've seen a snake and look down to find out it was a twig. Imagine if it was the other way around and we were walking through the forest and there was a snake there and we thought it was a twig. There wouldn't be any human beings left. We would never have evolved. So fear is there to protect us. You know, next time you get scared of something you have to do, thank yourself for pointing that out to you. Embrace it. Be happy with it. Of course, there are balances. Once it's gone so far, then you say, hey, thank you for the warning. I've got it. You don't need to scare me to death now. I'm fine. I've got it. I know I have to be careful. Paul Pricken, correct breathing. Paul, thank you. A long one. I should do a big answer on this. You know, I think the more we compartmentalize, breathe here, then breathe here, and breathe in your stomach, and breathe, blah, blah, you know, blah. Again, maybe it's beyond my intellect, but it's too complicated for me. For me, just a simple Correct breathing. Interesting question. Correct breathing for what? I breathe differently for Mahler 3, for the first note of Mahler 3, or for the first note of Bolero, or the first note of Berg 3 Pieces, or the first note of everything. The breath that we take in, it's the oldest one in the book, needs to be the one musically that we want to go out. And I think as long as we stick to that, we're okay. If we want to make a relaxed sound, take a relaxed breath. I'm not big on breathing technique. I'm really not. Actually, that's a quote, isn't it? That's Arnold Jacobs said that, didn't he? I'm not big on breathing technique. I just want to take in a load of relaxed air and get it to my lips, something along those lines. And I don't think it can get any better than that. I think the danger comes when we have to teach someone how to breathe. Like I say, maybe I'm getting it wrong. I'm going to do a big one on this. I'm going to do a big podcast on this. Josh Bledsoe. A few players have been able to so convincingly cross between the orchestral and solo chamber styles as you have. Well, I'm not sure about that. I would really be interested in hearing how you approach that. Well, Josh, there's a reason why I don't play in orchestras anymore. For me, whatever I play, it's not about me. It's about the music and the composer. And honestly, being an orchestral trombone player and a soloist is the hardest thing you can possibly do, because it's like playing two different instruments. I literally would have two different embouchure settings, one for solos, one for orchestral playing, and it's really, really tough. But how you switch between those things says that you're coming from a sound concept that you have in your head. You know, the concept of how big is my sound, what colour of sound, what type of sound, what articulation. Am I playing from the back of the stage? Am I playing from the front of the stage? And that then changes everything that you do. If you try and think, okay, I'm in a chamber group and now I need to do this, and it gets very complicated. Sound concept is everything. So rather than physically trying to change things in your body, that's not going to happen. You've got to change it in your head. Some players, some famous players, play the same in an orchestra, in chamber music, in solo playing, and I always found that really difficult because the roles are so completely different. So I know that I kind of have answered that, but I'm not planning on going into politics. I know I haven't directly answered your question, other than to say. Yeah, it's about sound concept. Everything is about sound concept. And if you have the sound concept for playing in a brass quintet, you're going to breathe differently. Everything, your technique's going to change. It's tough. I recently went and played in Helsinki, did Bruckner 6 with them. Loved it. Had a great time. My flexibility was destroyed in 2 days. Having been so happy with the breakthroughs I'd made on my basic technique that my flexibility was now brilliant. It had all gone in 2 days. And when I was in orchestras, I finished up having to play flexibilities 2 hours a day. And I'm not kidding, So, yeah, it is tough, but it all comes from sound concept. So, David Langle, what's some advice you would want to tell your younger self? Do you have any regrets in your career? That's a fantastic question. And unlike politicians, I am going to answer your question. But I'm going to start by saying Simon Rattle was asked this question, I think on a BBC site, look it up. And I thought his answers were spectacular. I mean, really honest and a great guide to any young player. All right, when I was young, I was very headstrong, I thought I could do anything, and, I was probably a bit of a jerk, So on the one hand, I'd like to tell myself to shut up, listen and learn. But on the other hand, you kind of need that spark. You need the ambition and the drive when you're young. What would I tell my younger self? Learn the piano, young man. Because if you want to go into conducting and you can't play the piano, it's an uphill battle. Stick at the piano. Although I don't totally blame myself for that. I don't think the way it was taught was great. Study harmony and structure more. Yes, try and become a better all-round musician. Earlier, I learnt so much from the people I worked with throughout my life, and I am still learning. But I think study, you know, the actual conventional, traditional style of studying. Do I have any regrets in my career? Yes, I do. And this is really a very private and honest answer. If I'm honest, I spent my life chasing money. And I was quite good at it. And so I always looked at the best financial options, rather than looking at what I creatively, artistically wanted to do, exclusively, to the exclusion of all other things. Whether I'm paid for it or not, I don't care. This is what I want to do. And like I said, this was a very personal answer. I wish that I'd artistically set out more with an agenda when I was younger. And it's something that I'm doing more now. Some question, do I regret leaving orchestras? You know, no. Do I regret I didn't leave them earlier? I guess not, no. So actually, as far as the running order of my career, no. No, I don't have any regrets. I've had the most incredible career so far, and it continues. I just wish that I'd, like I say, I wish I'd followed my artistic direction rather than the financial direction. So that's about as honest as I can get with that, I think. Okay, Nick Scholl, opportunities and working conditions for freelance trombonists, musicians, the non-orchestral trombonist. There's a certain conservatoire atmosphere that you've only made it when you win an orchestral audition, yet there is so much more to explore. Nick, thank you so much for this. This is the last one I'm answering, and it's a great question. You can probably imagine that 99% of students who come through my studio door all say the same thing. I want a job in an orchestra. I keep waiting for someone who's going to come in and say they want to do music theatre, or they want to do a mixed basket and of teaching and chamber music and freelancing, because there's so many other ways to earn money as a musician. I would say to you that of 28 years of teaching now, I think the happiest students that I've ever had are freelancers, because they're a moving target. They're never in one place long enough to fall out with people. And they do chamber music. They do teaching. They do music theatre. But it relies on being incredibly creative. Work creation. Having a business plan, as I keep talking about earlier. It relies on you taking control of your career. And yeah, you know, institutions, they like it when someone has got a job in an orchestra, you know. It's a good thing to put down on a piece of paper. And it's a good thing to do, but I as a teacher, certainly try and encourage people to look beyond or away from orchestras to build a career. I guess, you know, playing in an orchestra, no matter how good it is going to be slightly one-dimensional. I mean, I know when I was in orchestras, I never had to think about anything. I had my schedule provided for me if we went on tour. I didn't have to book flights. I didn't have to have pieces written for me. I didn't have to make concerts happen. But once you get into that process, it's really very rewarding. Now, let's see if I answered your question, that you've only made it when you win an orchestra audition. Yeah, get over it. The only person to whom it matters whether you've made it or not is you. And at the end of the day, it's about your artistic and musical fulfillment. And if you don't think your direction is going in an orchestra, don't go in an orchestra. Look at John Kenny. John Kenny, I remember the first time I heard him in the 1980s, we all thought he was a bloody nutter. We thought he was mad. And we all love him now. He hasn't changed. Well, he's grown, obviously, but he hasn't changed what he's doing. We've changed. He's changed us, and we love him. He's wonderful. So I have so much respect for people like that. If you don't think your direction is in an orchestra, don't do it. But you have to work out what your direction is, and never mind what conservatoires think their job, and many of them do a great job at it, is to give you the best possible education. Ultimately, whether you're a success or a failure depends on your happiness, not on whether your name is on a piece of paper. And I have a question from Jarvbone. I assume that's you, Carol. That's a great name. If I were you, I'd have your name changed by deed poll. From now on, you will only be known as Jarvbone. What a brilliant name. Hope you're well. Anyway, so you ask about how to prepare for recitals, with stamina, etc. First of all, I think the first question that we have to ask when we do a recital is, where am I playing and to whom am I playing? Is it at a university? Is it a music club? Is it a brass band thing? Is it a trombone society? Who knows? You have to get to know your audience. What do they want to listen to? What do they want to hear? So that's the first thing. Really look at it as like a business plan. Plan out what they're going to want to hear. Because if you're doing a music club, they're not going to want to hear you playing Keren by Xenakis, probably. Not if there are a lot of pensioners who went to hear a string quartet the week before. So that's the first thing. Know your audience. Second, and this is very important, not just for me, but for students. And I always say this now, never push yourself in a recital. If you have to play for 45 minutes, an hour or 2 hours, it's not a time to be experimenting. Stay within your comfort zone. We have this mythical idea that we will set a very demanding program, and the process of having to learn and study and practice for this will help us grow and develop. And we've all been in that position a week before the recital thinking, this is not going to happen. We're always, our eyes are always bigger than our belly. We always think we can learn and develop and grow faster and better. I certainly am anyway. So if you have to play as I do, if I'm playing 2 hours, I mean, that includes an intermission, I would dare say. But, I'll probably recycle 75% of the repertoire and put 25% new pieces in if I want to keep it moving, if I want to keep changing the repertoire. But the great thing to do is if you're doing several recitals, is to get a program up and running and do it. Know your strengths. Know what you're good at. Carol, you play beautiful ballads. Do them. Me too. So you'll hear me playing a lot of melodies. You'll hear me playing high and quiet. You'll hear me playing bloody fast. And so it's a good opportunity to sit down and write down on a piece of paper, what do I do really well? It's a big temptation to do a recital and follow what's called, the standard repertoire route. What does everybody else play? Never mind what everybody else plays. What do you do? Who are you? What have you got to say? The majority of, if you look at the people who do a lot of recitals now, they play pieces that are either been written for them or things that, they do best. They play to their strengths. So just because other people do the Tomasi really well doesn't mean to say you have to do it. Just because other people play the Bluebells of Scotland really well, it doesn't say you have to do it. So work out what you do, stay within your comfort zone. The other thing is plan your script. Work out what you're going to say. Hopefully you're in your mother tongue. It's a bit tough. I can do it in German or in English, or if push comes to shove, a little bit in French, but I don't like doing that. So this thing about stamina, we get worried in the practice room because we set these pieces up and just knock them down one after the other. And no one ever does a recital where you put the thing on your face and leave it there for 45 minutes. Maybe you're going to walk off, come back on. get a glass of water at the side of the stage. Maybe you're going to talk to the audience. And, you know, there's my head of studies here at in Bern said something that I think really was really brilliant, because there was a discussion as to maybe certain instruments, certain brass instruments, shouldn't have to do an hour-long recital because it was harder on the face than, let's say, a trombone or a tuba. And the head of studies' answer was, the recital is 1 hour long. What you do in that hour is entirely your decision. If you want to talk, if you want to sing, if you want to put a slideshow up, if you want to tell jokes, if you want to dance, you can do anything you like, but you're on the stage for an hour. And I thought that was really, really excellent. And I would say that it's something that we always need to develop. I mean, my recitals tend to be a little bit somewhere between an evening with and a stand-up comedy routine. And it's born purely out of the need to protect my face. I think a lot of brass players are good at public speaking because of that. But it's what the audience want to hear anyway. They want to hear you speak. They want to know who you are. It's, you know, they want to hear who you are as a musician, and they want to hear who you are. They want to get to know you. So that's the other thing. Now, the other element to stamina is I tend to start very broad with my brush strokes. I tend to, if I'm drawing, like imagine drawing a picture, you've got the frame, and I draw the outline of some mountains, and you know, there's a tree here and a house there, and I don't go into many details. Because if I have a recital program to play and it's an hour long, and I kind of play through those pieces, play the first piece, look at my phone, watch a bit of cricket on YouTube, check out the price of some wines that I'm interested in. That kind of recreates the environment of talking to the audience or walking off the stage. Then I play the second piece. Take it easy. Don't overdo it. Don't push it. Remember, there's two ways that there are two interpretations of, oh dear, my favourite word. There are two ways of looking at any piece of music. One is if you're going to play it as a one-off. You go up, 15 minutes, bang. Let's say you're going to play the Tomasi. There is a way of preparing that to play it with an orchestra where it's 15 minutes of your life, you give everything you've got. And another one where it's part of a 2-hour recital where it says, hey, think about what I have to do after this. So your approach changes completely. Let's not think of stamina as just learning to knock walls down. Let's approach it sensibly. Let's approach it intelligently. Let's not hurt ourselves. So let's say you are going to do the Tomasi in a recital. How can I get through that piece? How can I change the way that I play that piece that it's not going to hurt me? Then I'm still going to be ready to play whatever. I mean, the only point in me practicing the Bluebells of Scotland is after I've been playing for an hour or 2 hours, because that's usually when I do it. There's no point in me picking it up and practicing it. I can play it. It's not a problem. But can I play it after an hour or after 2 hours? So you always have to have in mind, what am I going to do in 20 minutes? What am I going to be playing in 40 minutes? Don't go for the glory on the first piece. Play conservatively. Be careful. Don't hurt yourself. And not only is that the same with practicing pacing a recital, but it's in the same way as pacing your practice. You do 6 hours practice in one day, you really hit it hard, you think you're a superstar, you go and drink a beer, brilliant, fantastic, you're wrecked for the next week. Always remember, you have to play, you have to be in a position to play the next day. You have to be healthy to play the next day. So, take it easy. Don't hurt yourself. If you have a recital to do and you're tired at the end of it, maybe you can hurt yourself then, maybe a little bit. And that may be very bad advice from me. But I would. It's the only time I would ever push myself would be if I really had to. I do not believe in building stamina by hurting your face and taking a rest and then hurting it again. I know there are some players who do that. I don't. I never do that. I'm 55 years old. I don't have a mark on my face, and I don't intend hurting it. So that's the other thing. Changing your approach to the repertoire, given its sort of position within a recital. Now, here's the other thing. Let's say you practice. We all have to. And let's say you're going to do 2 hours practice a day. 1 hour is on basics. The other is your recital program. It's an hour. And if you play that recital program through every day for a month, you've practiced everything 30 times. And at the end of that month, you'll find out what's still a problem. And if there is anything that's still a problem, then go in detail on those things. What's the problem? Is it your articulation? Is it your flexibility? Is it your breathing? How do you need to blah, blah, blah? And of course, you go through something, you make a mistake, and you make a mental note. Tomorrow, watch out for that. And you check whether you make the same mistake again. And if you do, maybe the day after that, you think about it differently. But stopping and going back over things in the middle of a recital program and practicing is useless. It's basically a waste of time. You don't just have to practice the pieces, you have to practice all the pieces, one after another. And you need the musical the concept. You need the concept of this big line. It's all a big performance. It's all one big act. So that would be the advice I would give. The other thing is, you're going to make mistakes. Don't panic. Anybody who doesn't make a mistake in a 1 hour or a 2 hour recital isn't trying hard enough. So the only thing is you don't know when they're going to come. But we know they're going to come. Not quite sure when. That's what it is. Don't panic. They usually happen in the places you're least expecting it. And I'm kind of old enough now to sort of like raise my eyebrow in a recital and think, wasn't expecting that. So there we are. Carol, thank you for asking that. We could have had the discussion over a glass of wine at some point in London, which I definitely owe you at some point. But thank you for asking it so I had the opportunity to share that with more people than just you. All right. Hope that helps. Bye. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. If there are any issues that you found particularly interesting, don't forget to contact me, and always go to ianbousfield.com for lots more interesting stuff.